arrests in Pakistan and arrests on American university campuses for protesting for a ceasefire.
Yeah, and it's weird because you would think that Pakistan's foreign policy or just like policy regarding like Palestine in general would be completely different from America's policy.
No, the thing that shocked me most was American college campuses are supposed to be, sort of very free and open minded, and but there's certain like they can talk all about LGBT and whatever they want to, but the moment they start to hit, you know, any sort of nerves, they have to be. Why the police? Why do you think the police are to intervene? Do
Because
you think
university students are notorious for being extremely dangerous, especially American university students.
yeah. No. Do you think the anti-Semitism thing has like any weight because all those kids are like leftists, left-leaning individuals, probably?
No, I doubt that it does because it has become like a blanket term at this point.
Is lost
It's
value.
it's funny to see it used against the left because normally it's the left that uses these kinds
Yeah.
of terms, like homophobic or
Anti-Semitic specifically, yeah. They use it as a sort of as a cudgel to like browbeat and stamp down anything that is critical of, the situation with the whites.
Israel especially.
No, the whites. It's always used as a sort of a dog whistle against whites in America. Just whites in general, because whenever they have any conversation about any sort of nationalism or any sort of conservatism, it's like you're a Nazi, you're an anti-Semite, you're a racist, and you're a homophobe and transphobe apparently. Can you be a homophobe and not be a transphobe?
No,
I feel
I
like,
don't think so. I
no,
think like a prerequisite for being a transphobe is that you have to be a homophobe.
homophobe.
Like you can't get there without the
No.
first step.
Arrests all around American. So New York University and Yale University, and I think I don't know about New York University, but Yale is like a famously liberal college. No,
I think so, yeah. All these university campuses tend to lean liberal.
yeah,
I can't really recall a university campus being like a right wing university campus.
maybe like a business school, like a Wharton or something, maybe.
Yeah, maybe maybe an aggressively, with like a big fraternity or something like that.
Yeah,
Maybe those would be a bit more right wing.
no, but like it's very funny that these. I think I think it's a bit of a Frankenstein style monster that because classically the Israel lobby has always been funding a lot of these diverse thinking
Right.
liberal sort of like how can we further subdivide society in you know
You think that really happens?
I think so. It seems to be the case. Like the ADL, for example, the Anti Defamation League, which is primarily an Israel defense propaganda tool, has always stood up for the leftist types and has given defamation notices and has pursued legally anyone from the conservative right, sort of white nationalist,
But have they
Christian.
done this for like non-Jewish issues?
Yes. The ADL is generic. The ADL has so the origin of the ADL. You can look into it as an audience member. ADL, the Anti Defamation League. Or I think that's what it's called. It started off as a defense for the against an accused Jewish man, I think, who had molested or raped an underage girl, like a white girl,
Okay.
and it slandered everyone who threw the accusation at him, even though it seems to be the case that he was authentically a child abuser, and he was some prominent Jewish businessman, and I think he had connections with crime as well. And
Did he
at that
get
time,
convicted?
no, he got away with it. And I think at that time, the criminal networks in the business community were very fundamental to the Zionist movement in the formation of Israel. Anyways, I mean that's not the case that I'm making. The case that I'm making is that these kinds of institutions have classically, clamped down on conservative voices in America and in Europe. They have equivalents, and hate speech laws are generally tended to be geared towards conservatives. You know,
Yeah,
at curbing.
why do you think that is?
I think this is genuinely being non-racist. Genuinely, as somebody who would be maybe considered a part of a community that is migrating in mass droves to Europe and America, I think minorities tend to lean left, not because of their personal dispositions, but simply because there's easier voting and immigration policies and employment policies, as well as like a safety social net, like welfare or public housing or free healthcare. Those things I think are like traps that the left leaning or liberal parties have for migratory communities, for what's the people of color. What's the
Right.
people of color is so racist, I feel like, implicitly. It's just something the left has coined this as a generic sort of reference point. It treats us all like a monolith, clumps us all into one,
It
and people
basically
of
means they
color,
are like non-whites.
non-whites, and then it always it's so offensive to me as a non-white, I guess, because it almost treats us like children.
Right.
It's infantilizing anyone who's not white, and it's an insane implication that anyone who's non-white is somehow marginalized or in a weaker automatic social position, or automatically weaker social position,
Right.
and they need to be propped up with whatever. It can be argued for the black community in America maybe 100 years ago, maybe 50 years ago, even today in some aspects, but just any migratory community, you're all one thing, and and that thing is that you have color in you. What is it
Right.
supposed to mean?
You have melanin.
You have melanin. You have too much melanin. I think that the implicit like racist undertones of a lot of left, the ideals that the left espouses, are the trap that they're stuck in. And anyone who's authentically like looking at Marxist ideology or any of these, gobbledygook philosophies, I think the only authentic takeaway would be a criticism of the financial system. That's about it.
Right.
Anything else like with race or gender or whatever, you're a demon. I genuinely think they're demonic. They're possessed. They hate like women and children and men and in normal sort of relationships, and the orthodox sort of default setting of the family unit, of the sexual hierarchy, of the social hierarchy, competence sort of, these they don't like these things. They don't like competence. They don't like, to this day, one of my biggest regrets is that none of us, friends or family, none of us developed any tangible, hands-on skill. You know, like being able to work a car at an expert level. At an amateur level, sure, we could, but at an expert level, or woodwork or any kind of, I think they have an aversion to competency, and because we grew up in this sort of liberal, sort of
But like, how much of that would you say is like the fault of like maybe the left or like a liberal group? Because I think this can be traced back to just colleges being a big thing.
no, but that the big push to send everyone to school
Yeah.
for some nonsense liberal arts degree is it's a big leftist push, isn't it?
But George Bush also did it back in his day. He had like these policies. I forget what his policy was called. No child left behind.
Yeah, no child left behind.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the policies. The policies that incentivize college education, the government is all the same. They're always going to incentivize the banks to trap people, right? That's a big financial trap. But the social aspect, the one that we can sort of push back on and engineer, because nobody's going to listen to your policy position on whether people should go to college or not, right?
Right.
Is so, for example, the explosion of liberal arts degrees and liberal arts colleges.
Right.
Not that the liberal arts aren't important, not that the applied arts aren't important, philosophy, anthropology, and the like. It's just their insistence on developing, on subdividing and categorizing these sciences and disciplines that just don't make any sense. The history of gender studies, or the gender studies altogether, and then gender studies and its sub-disciplines,
Yeah.
right? I don't think that would appear if you had polytechnics where people were learning how to run factory machinery or fix cars or
Maybe.
do contraction work or
But
electrical work in
it
houses.
also seems like a very, like a class issue almost, where I think one of the things that drives people away from these jobs is that, they're perceived as being lower status jobs. Like, for example, the other day I was reading that elevator repairman, make more than most PhD students or college
As they
graduates.
should.
Similarly, there's like like people who repair like train tracks. There's a particular designation for that. Those people also make more money, but a lot of PhD students would rather that they work some kind of menial job or like some managerial role
Yeah.
as opposed to like going into that kind of trade.
You know what it is? It's this over. It also has not to just blame the left entirely. It also has to do with this hyper individualism. Everyone has to think for themselves. Everyone has to come up with new ideas, and everyone has to. It's just this this over focus on the cerebral and the experiential on the individual level. Some people just need to shut up and do their job. That's what they need to do. Most people aren't very bright when you meet them.
Just learn like the family trade.
So learn like the family trade. Like listen, most sort of like where their eyes are too close, set too close. You know what I mean? Like just the weird sort of predator, like front-facing predator eyes. Just a Google gobble sort of nonsense person that you meet on the street.
Yeah,
The average human being. I mean,
that person has no right
not
to
to
be going
no, not to,
to university.
not to not diminish their value in the eyes of God or like any spiritual sort of weight that they might have in a society. I'm just saying most people are not capable of forming a single thought.
Okay.
And you can drive them into like they used to hunt buffalo in North America when the natives would like rush them off cliffs.
Right.
Like you can sort of, and then they would make these giant like death caves and death valleys for them,
Right.
which would develop combustible gases and then explode.
Really?
Yeah, so when the bodies would pile up, obviously rot sets in, and then the gases can't escape, and they would explode sometimes.
That's insane.
Because it's hundreds of bison, right?
Right.
Not buffalo, sorry, bison. Beautiful animal, by the way. I would love to eat it sometime. It does look delicious.
It does, yeah. As all the it's like a trend these days.
Is it?
Yeah,
Bison meat?
Bison meat.
I'm sure it's healthier than just grain-fed cows.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry for the sniffling. We both have the flu
Which, by the way, seems to be viral in the world right now.
and engineered. So I mean, coming back to we strayed off the thing too much. Coming back to the college arrests, I think it's really ironic that these guys get arrested for talking about the wrong thing. Like, because these kids didn't protest as hard about the Ukraine war. And I'm happy for them in that, this works for us. We want the thing to be stopped, and we want Israel to be dismantled as is. But like in the Russia-Ukraine paradigm, for some reason they viewed, it was a very typical liberal sort of position to view Russia as an aggressor.
Yeah.
Well, that was weird. Why is that? I don't get it.
I think
Why don't they, because of the communist or socialist history with Russia, why don't they ever?
Yeah, so that is weird. I think you will find people on, left-leaning people.
Far left, yeah.
You will find a lot of people who support Russia, but
Yeah,
in that case-
principally anti-war types.
no, what do you mean? Like principally,
Like a lot of the left isn't like anti-war. A lot of the liberals aren't. The far left is principally that they argue that they're anti-war.
yeah, they're anti-war until it's time to go to war, basically. In Russia's case, I think America was able to successfully push this narrative that Ukraine wasn't doing anything, and Putin was like this war-hungry
Like
psychopath.
expansionist psycho.
Yeah, and he had like these imperialist sort of goals that he had set for himself.
I'm sure the Russia Putin stuff helped. The Trump Putin stuff.
Yeah, because that
there
is
was
the angle that they had
There was
been,
they've
for
been
quite some
meddling in our democracy. They're intervening in our politics.
Right. So, like, it's exactly the same with Iran and China, like we discussed the last time, where they've been, like, sort of slowly building this narrative for many years now.
Yeah.
In the case of Israel Palestine, I think it's just too, it's so egregious, the sort of power dynamics that are going on there, that there's no way to sell that to the left.
And in the left's analysis of brown versus white and this sort of power versus weak people, that paradigm, the Palestinians fit perfectly into that.
Yeah, they do. Israel, it's richer. The people are more white. They have all the military tech, all the equipment, and the Palestinians are, and also they have like these imperialist sort of
Overt imperialist designs by the Israelis, yeah.
where they
And
want
openly racist designs, yeah, yeah.
an apartheid and everything. They have like this very sort of xenophobic culture. So I think they just were not able to sell that idea, and it seems like also because this particular war is something. It's been a long time since America has been caught on the back foot like this, right?
You think they didn't predict what Israel was going to do, or
No, they couldn't predict what Palestine was going to do because
yeah.
think
Sorry.
about like in the last, let's say, 20 to 30 years, a war that wasn't started by America,
Indirectly it was, but yeah, sure.
right? Well, yeah, indirectly it was, but like, I guess like the powder keg that lit it, they weren't expecting that. I think they had this idea that the Palestinians had sort of resigned themselves
They were done.
to the fate. Yeah.
You know what the funniest thing was? I think the funniest thing was that when this happened on the campuses, and I think overall the funniest thing was all the right wing Zionist funded free speech guys, the intellectual dark web, all of them shut up about Israel. And all of a sudden, free speech on campuses, on the media, all of that disappeared. They fired Candace Owens because she hates Israel.
Right.
Essentially, she hates Israel, and they misconstrued it into like an anti-Semitism, try to clump her up with the Kanye situation,
Right.
and even now on the campuses when they're being shut down, these students, I don't see Ben Shapiro piping up about campus
Yeah.
culture, and
Free speech.
we don't need safe spaces for. You know, if the gays don't get safe spaces, then the Zionists shouldn't either, right?
Yes, and it's weird how like also all the big news agencies are reporting it as they don't even report it as like pro-Palestinian protesters or anything. They're like anti-Semitic protesters.
Yeah.
Just like sort of painting it with a broad brush.
No, I think 100% Israel is burning through the last of all the social political capital it has with Westerners, Christians, with religious conservatives, or with liberals. I think the only like the holdouts are the structural holdouts. So structurally, the payments that they give to Israel and those kinds of, and the politicians, they're still holding on to the old ways. But I think I would give it. I don't think they'll survive the decade in terms of the kind of support that they get. Historically, they've gotten. I think by 2030, maybe. I think Israel's done in the sense of getting a clean chit from Europe and America and the like.
Yeah, well, it's weird. They say you can fool some of the people some of the time,
Yeah.
and all the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of them all the time. And I feel like
There's been a lot of noticing.
there's been a lot of noticing. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Like with the war on terror and everything that happened, it was interesting to see how the Americans just sort of accepted wholesale.
Yeah, it took them 2 decades to figure out that we don't have to go die in the desert.
Yeah, so, and I think now it seems to me like people generally, and this is true for everybody around the world, they're a bit more privy to what their governments are doing and like these narratives that are being spun.
Yeah.
So people seem to be a lot more critical of things. And I think one of the reasons for that is that people are actually interacting a lot more.
No, it's insane, dude, okay, that you and I can talk to other people in the world and then we can share ideas and fill in the blanks, and yeah, it doesn't allow for a population that can be fooled into hating another people for no reason.
For no reason. And generally, like you can like open up Instagram and like some dude in like 60 seconds is going to explain how America toppled like a government
His government, yeah.
in like some country, or he'll explain in like 60 seconds why the Iraq war wasn't actually about
It wasn't about 9/11.
It wasn't about 9/11.
It honestly wasn't even about oil at this point. People realized that it was a geostrategic decision made on behalf of Israel and Saudi Arabia, which are a big burden on American foreign policy. I mean, how do you think this stands for Biden with the election coming up in November? It's just crazy to me that he was not able to, or his team wasn't able to. Whoever his handlers are, they've really like messed up any ground that the Democrats had in the election.
With Biden, it was weird how during his the time he got elected, there was a lot of weird things about the election. COVID hitting, the mail-in ballots, and everything. Um, because I don't know how much sympathy Biden had going into that election, but he definitely had a lot after like the whole COVID thing happened.
Yeah.
And now going into this next election, at least what I'm sensing is that because of this war with Russia, because of the war with Israel, all of a sudden, the sentiment is shifting again towards Trump. And it could be a coincidence, but like the way these things sort of play out, the way they happen, it's sometimes like the timing is too good,
Yeah.
right? It will be interesting to see what happens with Trump's cases, though.
Yeah, he's a the hearing was today, no?
Yeah, I think the hearing has started. There's been like opening statements and whatever. Uh, it's
I don't think they let him get elected.
Well, let's see. It's funny because it's funny to see like the American election sort of mirroring what has been going on in Pakistan for like the past 75 years.
For the third world in general.
Yeah, where like the popular leader, whoever has like the support of the people, he ends up getting thrown in
Criminal
jail,
charges
criminal
or
charges, or like not a fair election. And I think this is the case throughout the world where whenever like these, like let's say the deep state of what that particular country comes into play, the people sort of have like an allergic reaction to it. Like the masses generally don't like when they feel like they're being pushed around or like being lied to. And I think you have like a similar case in America right now, where the people are like, we've had enough of these wars. We don't want our tax money going into this stuff. And it seems like there's a lot of weight behind Trump again this time.
no, but like, do you think that if he comes into the elections and he's not arrested at any particular point, and no criminal charges are brought against him, and nothing gets proven, do you think that when he wins, and if he wins, they'll let him win? I don't think they'll let him win.
Um, I don't know because with the like the American, sort of system, you can. I don't think it's like a monolithic system where it's only
There's
left or right.
there's a bunch of competing interests in the background.
There's different competing interests, and we'll have to just. And Trump actually, he satisfies a lot of those big interests. Maybe leave some stuff off the table, like during his tenure there weren't any wars,
New wars.
any new wars, certain trade deals that he didn't go through. So obviously, like he is pissing off a certain segment of the elite, but at the same time, he's placating another one.
Like, because he did shift the embassy to Jerusalem, and he recognized it officially as the capital of Israel.
So that seems to be consistent across the board, right? But
Okay, none of them deviate from that.
it doesn't seem like it. Like who
They all
has
go to
been?
the wall.
Yeah, they all go to the wall. They all take funding from
They all
APAC.
wear the little hat.
They all have to do that thing. I think like the that part of the system is just too deeply entrenched. Anybody who comes in, not playing that game
No, but this is
is
the
gonna
first
have
time
a
I've
hard
ever
time.
seen like APAC lobbyists being harassed in Washington by journalists and activists. That's a new thing.
Right.
And I think that's why I say that I think the noticing that's going on is in the 20 somethings, liberal or conservative or otherwise. And when they're in their 30s and 40s, I don't think Israel's going to fly anymore as such a big financial and political burden on American foreign policy.
Well,
I guess you're right because they just promised a $60 billion package to the Ukraine,
right.
and in exchange they told them not to bomb the oil fields, the Russian oil fields anymore. So I mean, $60 billion is not nothing. I mean, I've seen American cities on the internet.
Yeah.
I've seen Baltimore. Have you seen Skid Row in California, the
Yes.
main congregating area for the homeless?
Yeah, they're in horrible shape right now.
So I mean, $60 billion is not nothing.
It's not. But the thing is, like, what we are seeing is like this growing trend in the world where, like the governments are becoming a bit more totalitarian in nature, and it seems like the control mechanisms have gotten so big and they've
And
gotten
blatant.
so blatant and vast that it's hard to fight against them, without like those organizational capabilities.
And also the speed with which they throw out the news and events keep happening. The sort of the news cycle is getting, its half life is getting smaller and smaller. The window within which you can react to a certain piece of news, like first it was maybe like every week. Now it's like within a few hours the whole thing has changed, and you have to move on to the next. Oh, aliens are real, by the way.
Yeah.
Just that casually. Yeah, we have some biological samples, and we have these donations. They call them donations, by the way. The crashed, the so claimed crashed UAPs,
Yeah.
UFOs, whatever. They say they're donations from whoever.
Like the implication being
The
that.
implication being that some other higher life form, aliens, whatever, interdimensional demons, whatever you want to call them,
Okay.
the DMT elves, and this just the moment this would have entered the zeitgeist, the next day you'll find out that Diddy is a child diddler or whatever.
Yeah, he's like a raging
He's a
homosexual.
rising homosexual. He's been molesting and raping all the other celebrities,
Yeah.
and also, did you know Michael Jackson is still alive? Yeah, he lives beyond the ice wall.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
you know the ice wall, right, where the reptilians are, and then the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. So like I feel like they're breaking down the ability for people to even form thoughts
that's
about
true, but and
about political solutions that they want.
true, and the other thing is that I think a lot of people, especially like the middle
Also, we just
class,
banned TikTok. Thought I'd let you know.
yeah, that went through. But like most of the middle class right now in any country is just so sort of lambasted with like all these creature comforts.
Mm.
Like the cell phone, for example, just like people are just constantly getting dopamine hits from
It
their
can keep you. It
smartphones.
can keep you entertained like 7-8 hours a day.
Yeah, and like people, I think, have become very complacent because of that. There's no violent revolution that's going to happen when people can, just order something off of Uber Eats and watch Netflix
In
at
high
home
speed, they have high speed porn
and all that stuff. So,
yeah.
like, people are sort of content in their lane. The Americans,
By the way,
although,
saying this is not as impactful as just seeing it. This is genuinely. I've been hearing this bullshit for like 5 years now. Everybody's addicted to the. We don't even want. We don't even use computers anymore.
yeah,
And, you know the bit, right? It's so much more real than just saying it. When you go out and see people, they have
right.
no violence in them. They have no. They have no ambition. They have no. They don't even act out. People don't even act out anymore. By the way, people have become like I don't. I rarely see a fight in the street. I'm not saying this that it's a good thing to see, but it just shows the juices are flowing. You know what I mean?
Right. I think with the Americans, though, it's a bit different because, like, the Americans have been historically, they're kind of like a very, what in Urdu you would say, jazbati.
Emotional, sort of freedom-loving sort of people.
Yeah, I guess. Is that like a correct way to translate it?
Emotional, jazbati. Yeah, emotional, volatile,
Yeah, very
reactive.
I guess, yeah, like all those adjectives rolled into
Yeah.
one. So, I think like their government does sort of has to be on the back foot when like the Americans get riled up. And you remember like when we talked to Immortal Technique the other day, he was also saying that he felt like the problem with America was that nothing gets done until people start noticing,
Yeah.
and then they come out on the streets, and the government will then go and fix that particular issue.
So, like, you think that they're kept in a propagandized state where they can't figure out the one problem, and it takes them a longer time to figure that one problem out, and then when they do, the government is always forced to fix it. But that being forced to fix it, I feel like that ability is slowly being taken away from the Americans. Like Ukraine, nobody wants it clearly.
Right.
Very very small segment of elites and intellectuals and I don't know Hollywood types, right? But it's it's just something like when Obama wanted to get into Syria, they were able to stop him,
Right.
right? But if the timing is right, if the president is right, if the people are glued in, or geared into the politics enough, then they'll be able to stop it. But if there's a lot of distraction available to them, because I think a lot of people lose interest when Biden becomes president. That was one of the things, one of the major achievements for the American establishment was that people lost their interest in politics. And one of the major sort of threats to them was the interest that Trump had generated in politics, in whatever form, but interest did exist.
Right. Like all the late night talk show celebrity guys, they had to have like a set about Trump.
Trump, about the Orange Man and how bad he was.
There had to be a bit thrown in on every
None,
program.
none, and none of them, and if there was a contractual arrangement where none of them were allowed to be funny. None of the bits. They had to particularly
Yeah,
be
yeah.
bad.
They had written that into the contract that if you are funny, you know, we're gonna replace you with Jay Leno or something.
All of them were crying on their shows as well, by the way.
Crying.
Yeah, all the time. About like with actual tears about what it means to be American, and Trump's not it, and then it became these weird catharsis shows for liberals as opposed to comedy late night shows.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of person watches those shows,
Listen,
honestly.
Trump killed TV. Trump's killed TV. TV's dead.
Yeah, you think people just want political? I guess like the stakes are a lot higher with political entertainment.
Huh.
Maybe like watching like a TV show, the stakes aren't as high. But when you're watching like a political show, it's literally like the world at stake.
The actual IRL, people are going to die.
Yeah, they should have like this program where it's about like whether the president's going to like nuke some part of the world or
Yeah, you
not.
can vote. You can vote.
And like people vote in on their phones that I really want Iran nuked today.
No, I mean, I think the tech companies know something that we don't. You know what I mean?
Like what?
I feel like they have much more of a role than we could have imagined. Maybe in just the day-to-day opinion making, even it's not like a Shell or a or a big bank or something where they're just messing around with the economics. I think it's more the tech companies are directly communicating with the voters, with the consumers day to day. Like like a Halliburton or a Boeing would try to propagandize you, right?
Right.
Pro-war sentiments, pay the right politicians, pay the right journalists. But the tech companies are directly communicating with you. There's no buffer, but that's the difference. There's no buffer between them and you.
Right.
The government was the conduit which through the other giant corporations would approach us, right?
Right.
To put our to get our tax money, to get our votes a certain way, for us to consume a certain way. But the tech companies are directly advertising to you. You know, like the dream billboard thing that they had tried once.
No.
You know, the thing that they planned. I don't know if you read this marketing study. They were trying to develop this technology to get people to dream about products. Where they would design billboards and ads in a way where you would end up dreaming about those products. Right? Again, these are very far-fetched sort of Blade Runner type dystopian ideas that again The fact, just the mere fact that companies toy around with these ideas is, enough of a reason for us to get up and burn them down and riot. But
Well, I
it's
remember like how like the CEO of Nestle once
yeah, for it by the rain.
yeah, he wanted to patent the rain. He said like the rain is the property of Nestle. So like there are enough psychopaths
Yeah,
running
yeah, yeah, yeah.
around, I think.
But the tech companies is the difference between a Halliburton and a Google, a Boeing and a Meta is that they're directly talking to you. They don't need to make you dream about their product. Do you know what I mean?
Right, and they have like all your data and all
They know exactly what you behave
the
like.
data point. Actually, I think another interesting fact is that as the amount of data has grown in the world,
Yeah.
I think it's become harder and harder for like even these companies to manage all that data. And hence, I think the big push for AI, because essentially what AI does is
He's
it,
actually good at doing is not the shit that Boston Dynamics shows off. That's fake. The real shit is the big data handling.
yeah, that's what it seems to be good at. And I think that's like one of the reasons that like these people are so gung ho about artificial intelligence, because I think even right now like these companies or like these you know the elite sort of deep state or whatever, it's having a hard time managing all of the flow of data, because if it's volatile for us, I think it's also volatile for them. Where if it's like you plug one hole and then another one sort of pops up and springs a
What?
leak,
Oh, okay.
like a hole in a boat.
Yeah.
I don't know what other holes need plugging.
No, but I just think that, like, I think Google's definitely more clued in than most governments are in the third world.
No, true, for sure. I mean, Google is probably, you can, say it's a branch of the government.
Definitely.
It's
Of the military or the military intelligence or whatever you want to say.
right, because you
I,
can't
I,
be that
I
good.
don't view any of them, like even Elon Musk, Bezos, any of them. I don't view none of them as separate from the government.
Well, all of them work with or for the government, right? They have like these big contracts on the government. Elon Musk famously with NASA.
Yeah.
Bill Gates does all of these weird, like, sort of medical things. I think he,
No, Microsoft's origins are also with DARPA, the weapons research thing, as well as Google.
right. So they are like literally directly linked with the government in many ways. Even like, the origins of the internet are in these big government contracts and military contracts.
The point is that I think that most of these governments, most of these tech companies, unlike the sort of the billionaires and millionaires of the past, I think they've become. I think the world is their playground in the sense of that they're not just influencing policy; they're influencing policy like outcomes and decisions on an individual level. They're not so classically companies would buy policymakers and lobbyists and journalists and think tanks, right? These guys are directly influencing the individual.
Right.
They're directly influencing and there's something by its very nature demonic about that to whisper in your ear. It's like
True.
like in the Quran, like it says like I think all religions, most of them,
Yeah.
have any demonology or any sort of. It's always like they whisper in your ear.
Right. Satan whispering in your ear to do bad things. I think like that whisper has just become enhanced. It's like there's a microphone.
There's a screen. There's an audio visual component to it, and if you really think about it, a lot of the stuff that they want us to do has no monetary consequences. Like you can say the transgender stuff is about selling synthetic hormones or pharmaceuticals, but really it's not. That's a consequence of the industry coming up. The source of it just seems demonic. They just want to see people suffer. They want to see young people mutilate their genitals, or completely ruin their sexual healthy functioning lives for the rest of forever. in mass, en masse, in millions. There's no financial component really, if you really think about it. It's a byproduct. The primary driver seems to be something demonic, something beyond the physical, where they just want to see society break down into. And you can argue that it's much easier to control the society, and all those things are a consequence.
Right.
What is the principal driving force? Just deviance, just perversion,
Right.
just being these people are perverts basically.
Yeah, I think on the metaphysical level, like all of these things, they don't, you can't rationalize them, right?
It's like, in the Quran how Satan says to God that I will make sure that they transmore for ruin their takhliq. Takhliq is like their biological composition, the way that they were created. I will make them change that. And you would say, oh, tattoos or piercings or whatever kind of body modification, right, would have been classically categorized as changing your original state. But this is way beyond that. This is not just like a tattoo or a body piercing, right? This is the ultimate sort of challenge to the genetic or biological reality that you've been given. Like your soul is not a man or a woman, I guess, but like your body is a man and you're a man. And then I guess you have the soul of a man as well, I guess. I don't know.
Like the transgender argument sometimes seems very spiritual because it's like I'm a man
Oh
trapped in a
yeah.
woman's
The
body.
the two spirit stuff that they
Yeah.
say.
No,
No,
like, that I actually have like the soul of. Essentially, when you say you're a man trapped in a woman's body.
yeah, that's actually not them. That's the demon Steve. Their personal demon Steve who lives inside of them. No, it's demons, that's what it is.
I think so.
I think genuinely these
That's
people.
very Alex Jonesian.
No. I genuinely think these people are possessed. I think a lot of sexual deviants, something overtly aberrant about your personality is demonic. Otherwise, you wouldn't carry it like that. You wouldn't carry yourself like that. You would do your utmost to stop or to at least not present that way. Like if I had, like, I don't know, let's say my left hand didn't work,
Right.
you know what I mean, or it was a stub, wouldn't I put a fake hand on it?
You try to like cover the defect.
Yeah, but the fact that they're so open about whatever abhorrent aspect of their personality or their sexual proclivities or their physical just ugly is beautiful. The weird like left ugly is beautiful and all these weird fat chicks on modeling
Yeah.
front covers and
Dudes with beards like wearing dresses and
with beards and wearing dresses, and like every single social media influencer has worn nail polish at some point. That's the thing, right? Gen Z wears nail polish, guys wear nail polish. That's the new dress thing. The one that black people in Hollywood would get mad about.
right.
Like we don't want to wear the dress. You know how they make, like, the conspiracy, right? Where black celebrities will say that all male black celebrities have to dress up like a woman for some film or TV show.
Right. Right. Okay.
That's the contract you gotta sign. You know the one, right? Every Twitch streamer, whatever, gay boy, YouTube, whoever, they all have to paint their nails
I guess.
and wear makeup and then be a homo.
I think like one of the things that has sort of disappeared from modern society
It's a
is,
public shaming ritual, by the way, don't you think?
I don't know about that. Like what I would say
For
is,
you to show off your deformity, physical or otherwise,
but like people can be born deformed also.
which is fine, but you should hide it.
You think so?
That's the natural instinct of human beings. It's insane to say otherwise.
But what if like that brings with it some kind of like mental anguish?
Sure, that I'm not saying that it's not like people with acne always want to hide their acne, right?
Right.
And just its existence gives them mental anguish. Yes, the acne.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a good thing that they have acne. I'm just saying if something can't go away, it's abhorrent, it's ugly, it's disgusting about you, it's weird, it sticks out, it makes you not unique. It makes you stand out in like you're the smelly kid in class where
Yeah.
like you smell bad. You want to hide it, right? It might have negative. I'm just saying the initial instinct to want to hide it, that is normal. Like nakedness, not being nude all the time
Right.
in front of anyone. You know, don't want to be naked in front of people. Like my whole thing, even with, I immediately thought, by the way, when I went to the UK when I was 12, and I went to a water park and we played around. It was great. I went to the showers. I was wearing the swim shorts,
Yeah.
the Bermuda things, and I was showering in them because it was a public showering situation. Immediately, everyone got naked. Children, adults, old men. I just think it's inviting any sort of perversion, right?
Okay.
Like there was things wrong in Western society with regards to nakedness and opening their, your defects, your deformities, your privates, showing everything in public. I think the time bomb was there even way before, like in terms of sexuality or just their physical self. They, Somebody must have become gay by being naked in a shower in front of like 100 men at some point. They were shamed into it or molested into it or whatever.
It's hard to say. I think one of the things is that, like I was saying, one of the things that disappeared from society is that, men, for example, don't have to appear threatening anymore, right? Where, you see like dudes with piercings and, painting
Eh,
their nails or whatever. Now, like, if I was to go out and meet a guy on the street who was like had his nose pierced or like his ear pierced, immediately
You'd be a non-threat.
I won't take him as seriously as I normally would, right? Uh, so that's like one aspect to it. Uh, when you don't appear threatening and there's enough non-threatening people around, I think that sort of lulls you into this sort of, like safe space where you start taking like more liberties with your appearance, with the way you present yourself to the world.
Hmm.
And this other idea that they sort of have propagated, and I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but and it's like a manners thing, I guess, where okay, don't make fun of people, you might hurt their feelings, right? So when you remove like that aspect of society, of interaction, then like a lot of people are going to start taking liberties with the way,
They'll
you
start
know,
acting out, start dressing weird.
yeah, they'll start like, okay, well, if nobody is
If
gonna,
someone were to dress up like a woman, like a man,
yeah,
and they would walk around Pakistan, I think it would be very likely that they would be beaten.
if like he was very clearly a man, like he had a beard, for
Yeah, he
example,
was dressing up as a woman,
and he was up as a woman, if he was like clearly cross dressing, yeah, he might actually get
beaten.
beaten up.
I think at this point, I think this is like this over tolerant thing where you can't have any. It's a lot of it is relegating everything outside of yourself to the state. Like there's no beatdowns, there's no beef people have anymore.
But it's hard to argue that
I'm
these are
not.
positive aspects of society. Maybe they should be,
No, they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be. Over policing and overly governing the lives of people. It's definitely the end. The end conclusion would be a very gay society.
no. So, like for example, like if let's say we go back to the example of the guy dressed up as a woman, wouldn't you say that you are policing him if you say, "Oh, this is wrong or this is bad"?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
doesn't that fall into like that category of over policing?
No, no, it doesn't. Over policing. By over policing, I mean the state overly enforcing the laws. I don't mean people. I'm not saying vigilantism is cool or whatever, but I just think that the society, in its see by its very conception, the way we view society, it's impossible for us to perceive a society where you could act out in a way that's not legally acceptable. That's the caveat. So it's legally acceptable for you to walk around like a weirdo freak, but if somebody was to react to that and you were to carry yourself that way,
Yeah.
that would be a crime. I'm just saying this liberal paradigm of as long as you're not physically harming someone, you can do whatever. This is a problem. This is definitely a problem. I think we've ramped up the security and policing of the physical aspect and the metaphysical and the spiritual and the psychological just damage that you do to society has been completely ignored and washed away because we can't measure it.
Right.
We don't know, we can't measure it. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what's going on. Little children trying to uh, what was it, like cut off their breasts or like
Right.
mutilate their genitals.
Right. I guess like yeah, like the moral decay of a society is hard to measure in that paradigm, right?
No, but it's a unique time in history where there is an overt focus on any physical altercation. Like as long as you stay within the realms of your body, it's fine as an idea. I get it. It's not an effective way of or mode of living where people just attack each other and they're not afraid of the law. But I'm not saying go out and beat people up. What I'm saying is it's not a normal state of being. That's not how humans have lived. That's not, call it evolutionary, genetic, historical, whatever memory that we have. That's not how we live in communities. In a community, the community decides what is moral, what is immoral, in some vague, loose framework of shame, ostracization, making fun, beating you. But now the state can step in as long as something is not physical, as long as it does not extend beyond the boundary of your, whatever, 5 feet or 10 feet of physical space, you can do whatever the hell you want. The idea of community goes out the window, which is now why nobody has any ownership over community living. You don't give a shit about the community.
So I think like the greater problem that you've identified is not so much that the community, doesn't step in. It's more so that the state has sort of,
Made sure that there is no community.
or it
The-
has stepped away from like,
let's say the mechanism of action, let me make it easier. Let me
yeah,
say the mechanism of action of controlling such a weird, egregious sort of just public, just shenanigans from any individual would be, let's say, community policing. That the community police or the community whatever department that you go and complain in. If the mechanism of action was like that, our modern sensibilities would be like, yeah, maybe that's a bit better. But then they make sure that the police departments are not localized. The police departments are a national or a city scale or a province scale or a state scale thing. So there's no community. I'm not. Let's say we're not okay with individuals going up and doing it. The police has to step in. But the police is a big national or state level organization. The local police department is, and in more rural areas, by the way, in America, the local police department will be racist towards newcomers in town from other races. They will help the community, and I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing, but I'm saying it's a communal behavior, which protects the sanctity of their. And then those people don't have enough. They don't have the same amount of crime. They don't have the same amount of mental problems. They don't have autism. What's the most protected community in America? The Amish, right?
yeah,
Completely community policed. They have completely they're isolated from the rest. They have like no autism
okay.
because they don't use phones or they don't have 4G scrambling their brains, and they don't have porn, and they don't have weirdo freaks
But they
walking
also are
around.
missing out on skibidi toilet.
Yeah, skibidi toilet. Unfortunately, they're gonna have to miss out on YouTube shorts. Um, so I'm not saying the solution is there with the Amish.
Let's look at it from like an Islamic perspective, right? Where any kind of moral degeneracy that you see, um, is it up to anybody in the community to like
I think it
take
is. I
action?
think it is like with again. It's see Islam lays out moral ideas like principles. I don't think it enforces them on how they have to be acted out in every single time and physical iteration, because temporally and spatially these things change, right? The principle is, if you see something evil, stop it with your hand, stop it with your tongue, or at least hate it in your heart. That's the minimum, right? We know that everybody knows that, not everybody, but like Muslims know you have to stop it with your hand, you have to attack it with words, or you have to hate it in your heart. And hating something evil with your heart is the minimum standard of even being, of having faith in God or higher power, in any morality. That's the minimum, right? So the stopping with your hand thing is something that we foregone with the nation state and with policing and with modernity. Immediately, like even you and I can't have a conversation about stopping things with a hand, because immediately there exists a language to curb that thinking. You'll immediately say, oh, vigilantism, because there's a word that exists to describe a certain kind of behavior. Everything and anything that comes under that ambit is now poo-pooed just by the word existing, just by the language existing that can criticize that sort of that kind of mentality. Let's say you delegate that forcing evil by the hand to the state, to the police, then there should be a mechanism by which you can actually have that play out, as opposed to the state running cover for evil. You see, when you give up a certain, like, why do Americans get to own guns? It's in their constitution. Clearly, Islam hasn't formed a modern society, right, in 200, 300, 400 years. So, if at any point we decide to form a society around Islam, you would have to rethink a lot of ideas about weapon ownership and what level of policing that you can do. Americans are allowed to make militias, for example, legally by the constitution, because militiamen made America, right? There was militiamen who rebelled against the British crown, and we all know the story. Do you think any Muslim state would allow militias in their country?
Probably not.
No, because they're used to overt control, and they're in the early stages of nation statehood. I'm not saying militias are the way. I'm not saying I am saying the guns are definitely the way. Gun ownership has to be universal. People, like, do you remember when you would watch crime shows as a kid and you would think like, I can't do any crimes? That was an immediate thought I would have. Like, nobody can do anything because like they figure out every murder and solve it. That's like a fraction of a percentage of the actual crime that goes on. Like, most people don't understand that a majority of murders go unsolved in America, in Europe, anywhere in the world. And this is for the vast majority of human history, most crimes go unsolved. Because, I know forensic, testing and these things are really hyped up, and security cameras, but it doesn't work. It's really hard to catch a criminal and convict them fully of the actual charges. Like, even if you look at the majority of the serial, most people who get caught in crimes are low IQ. This is a fact. Like, this is very rare that you'll find like some serial killer, very high IQ type, and in those cases, their ego gets in the way.
Or it has to be like somebody who's like a repeat offender to the point that
It's insane. And usually, even though they're high IQ, their ego gets in the way and they kind of want the recognition of being caught. Like, many of the serial killers, if you look at them, they haven't killed 10, 12, 30, 40. They're rumored to have killed hundreds of people, but the ones that they figured out are the ones that they get charged with at the end, legally with evidence, are like 5 or 10 or 2 or however many. My point is that the absolute trust on experts would also then mean the absolute trust of the law. If you can trust Fauci for COVID, you can trust the law, and we have been trusting the law.
right.
I think it leads to a society where people don't take ownership of the public domain, and this is inevitable. This is the current reality we live in across the board: Muslim, Christian, secular nation, whatever, doesn't matter. A majority of people do not take charge or responsibility of anything outside of their individual self. It's a fine disposition to have to live a normal enough life. But as a collective, you're not going to end up with a society that you can love.
Well, they do take ownership of, like, let's say, for example, like going to the LGBT parade, right? Or protesting for like gay rights,
Sure,
gay
there's a
marriage.
limited domain. There's a limited domain of things that are acceptable for you to have ownership of public spaces or the public domain. You go to the ritual. It's the mass ritual. You go to the mass ritual.
But isn't that
It's the
like
Friday prayer for them, right?
Isn't-
That's the Jummah for them.
so? But isn't that also an expression of I want to live in a community where a man can marry another man?
Sure, it might be for some people. It doesn't seem to be the case for a majority of human beings. It doesn't seem to be the case for a majority of human history. It doesn't seem to be any. There seems to be no divine leeway for this. No serious religion, no serious civilization is like, yeah, we want a society where there is no gender and there is no sex, and free sex is the law of the land. And you know what? Kids should watch porn. There's no it's just a perversion of with that kind of questioning that this is also an expression. Don't doubt it. That's the mode of the way your ideas were communicated, but your ideas are perverted. You're a pervert, get away from me. That is what a majority of human beings would have done throughout history. Like I have no, and then some anthropologist weirdo freak will be like, actually, the Shamdudu tribe in Africa, when someone rapes over there, they give them money and then they give them massages and say that it's all right or whatever bullshit. Yeah, where is the Shamdudu tribe now?
Living in
Do you see? Have you
isolation.
seen the Sam Hyde bit?
No.
Hey, yeah, yo, circumcise the women.
I've seen that one.
There's nothing. Listen, cultural subjectivity or objectivity, however which way the term goes, it's nonsense. People have good things to add, but a majority of them, they're not that great. Certain civilizations have survived, thrived. Certain civilizations have not. They've died out. There's clearly a limited bandwidth within which you can have good ideas. Like there's a you know what I mean? And bad ideas will fall to the wayside unless propped up by design. Which is why I think that, do you think a majority of people on earth at any point would be like, yeah, I think our kids should get chemical treatment for their mental sex problem, whatever it is, the gender?
Probably not.
No, never in the future will this happen. This is why I don't take them seriously, by the way. The reason I take them seriously is because they have political power. The other reason why I wouldn't take them seriously is because they're not going to last. Already, when we were kids, the LGBT stuff was serious business. It was about civil rights. It was about liberties. It was about the ability to conduct your life as an equal member of society. Within 20 years, it's not a serious movement anymore.
Right. And it's funny how basically all the sort of arguments that the conservatives at the time were giving, that used to be made fun of.
The slippery slope argument,
The
yeah.
slippery slope argument, it actually turned out to be true.
Exactly what it was.
It's
That
exactly what happened.
you're gonna legalize zoophilia and incest and surprise pedophilia.
Yeah.
That's the new thing, right?
And you're gonna start influencing the kids, and it's like, no, we all, like, you're in charge for your own children, blah blah blah. And
Yeah.
now like the schools are pushing it. So
It's just a very hypocritical principle. Whenever they want to push things on the individual, they push things on the individual. Whenever they want to force us as a collective, they force us as a collective.
right.
You have to pick. And honestly, I don't think any society in human history has been an individualistic society. There's always some collective ideals, some collectivist ideals that they have. And I get it. If whites want America or Europe to be white or whatever, go ahead. I don't care. Stop immigration. Kick out everyone. I have no problem with it. It's their society. Do whatever they want with it.
You think America is unique?
Would I like it? No. It's a bad thing. It's a mean-spirited thing. But if that's what they want, that's what they want.
You think America is unique in this idea that the hyper sort of fixation on the self and the individual?
It's not America. It's everyone now. Now with the consumer products. Like my childhood in Pakistan, your childhood, you would remember this level of individualism I had not experienced. People had very little ideas. They had very simple lives. They didn't have so many things to consume, services or products or otherwise, even just IP in terms of entertainment. They were much more stoic, pensive. They had deeper emotional sort of attachment to ideas. They weren't fickle. They weren't so transient. Every day they had new opinions or whatever. It was a decent society. I liked growing up in it. It was a decent society. In hindsight, I am able to criticize the elements of it that had big gaping, all the flaws. But overall, it was a decent society. I spent most of my youth on the street, cycling, going to stores, hanging out with my friends, renting VHS tapes, and playing football or soccer or whatever in the park. It was normal.
Yeah.
It's not normal. It's not normal right now, and it's not as bad as maybe a Western society, but I can see it on the horizon.
Don't you think by and large American society seems to be rejecting these ideas?
Not by and large. I think the internet is our the veil of interaction through the internet is. I think they're done for socially and sexually. I think they're done for.
Really?
I think it's a small segment of really the hyper masculine or just traditional sort of people who are are done with it. But I think some things are beyond the point of like no return.
But these like super liberal, individualistic types, they tend to be very ineffectual, I would say.
Yeah, as individuals, but as a big hive mind creature that they are, like the Reddit types, they the amount of times they refer back to Reddit or some of these things as as the source of their ideas. At this point, I would say they're a hive mind. The internet has allowed them to become an actual hive mind. I'm not saying this in like a superfluous or as a joke, like as a sci-fi joke. I genuinely think they're a hive mind now. They're in unison, opinions are made in unison, goalposts are changed, new moral ideas are divined, and the messaging spreads like wildfire. You know, one thing, one click in America, the next day it's here in Pakistan. The kids are wearing whatever, they're wearing red hair or green hair or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's that instantaneous. It's a hive mind. And also the screen. I think what the screen does is it removes the element of the physical. Obviously, it does, but it removes. It creates an anonymity with life, where you don't have to attach value to ideas anymore because there's no physical threat to ideas.
Right.
Ideas have to be threatened by something. Otherwise, they're not worth having, are they? But being part of that big brain slop online with these kids, in chat rooms, wherever they go. Are there any new ones? I knew Reddit was big like 5 years ago,
I think
10 years ago.
Discord is like
Discord maybe,
big
yeah.
right now.
Video game. This for video games though mostly, but I'm sure kids talk about
It's
their
just
feelings.
it's like a chat room. It's like
big-
the old school chat rooms.
And you scroll by subject
I think so. Yeah.
and you make friends or whatever. These things. Remember, like, you remember how like Mike Tyson used to deal with reporters?
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing. That's not there anymore. You don't have an obnoxious, physical, unstoppable force threatening you for your idea. And unless the idea is not valuable to. Many times, don't you find yourself that you figure out when put in a hot situation, you hit the boiling point and you realize that you don't care about that idea or that thing as much as you thought you maybe did? That's the realization that all ideas they're not born equal, even if they're about subjects that you might hold dear to yourself.
Yeah.
But you find out that you don't really care about this because you're not willing to fight for it physically. That is, you're not physically willing to represent it. Whether that be standing out in the heat at a protest or at debating someone or arguing with someone. Even though I don't think arguing or debating is very useful, I think a nice conversation is much more appropriate to share or exchange ideas. But if you're not physically willing to back it up and potentially with violence, it's not worth it, is it? It's just something. It's just a thought in your head,
Yeah.
and then unfortunately that thought in your head can now be it can be lasered through or whatever with high speed internet to every other idiot in the world.
Right.
I'm not saying I feel very strongly about all of these things that I would die on a hill, and I'm just saying maybe the way I think everybody has like IT fatigue, tech fatigue. What do you want to call it?
Info fatigue.
Info fatigue. I physically see that most people I meet are tired.
Yeah.
They're physically tired. Most people I meet nowadays in the past 5 years are physically tired.
That might actually be just because of like very unhealthy lifestyles that everybody
No,
has.
but what is the catalyst for those unhealthy lifestyles? Like, it's definitely the tech.
Or just like modern living in general.
I mean, listen, most of what we call modern living, our grandparents were doing that as well. They had cars and they had air conditioners and they had refrigerators and whatever. It's something about the IT. What the hell do you call the social media tech, phones, computers, whatever? Something about them and high speed internet has been a very big catalyst in that's the only thing the only thing in the calculus of modern living that has changed is this from our grandparents, right? They had air conditioning, they had
Processed garbage
fans, they had
food.
processed garbage food. I'm not saying processed garbage food isn't bad, but what has particularly changed is that people are constantly online.
Yeah.
And we have no idea what 4G does to our brain. We have no idea what these microwave signals from these fucking things does to us.
In the long term,
We have no idea. We genuinely don't know. Anyone who, by the way, I used to be one of those people who used to scoff at these things. Like, my wife doesn't microwave food, by the way. She has to do it on the stove. And I used to scoff at that when I was a teenager, like, oh, the science, because we all grew up with that shit. But if you ask me right now, I have no idea what my phone does
Right.
to my brain. It clearly kills birds.
Phones?
Yeah, the signals make birds. They have the geolocation thing in there.
Yeah.
It throws them out of whack, and they, I don't know, fly into airplane turbines or whatever. You know what I mean?
Oh, really?
Apparently, yeah. Apparently, I was talking to this guy in the Lahore Zoo, who's in, not the zoo, the Safari Zoo, which is the bigger sort of drive-in sort of safari type. It's not great. It's okay. It's not bad. I was talking to the guy there. He was in charge of the education. He was in charge of the park education, which is like pamphlets and all the tour stuff, the tour audio
Yeah.
stuff, telling people what the animals are and where they came from. And he showed me like 7 or 6 migratory birds that come all the way from Siberia to Pakistan
Okay.
every year without fail. In the winters they come to Pakistan. In the summers they go back to Siberia. Beautiful birds. There was a kind of crane, there was a kind of duck, and there was a kind of swan. And he said a lot of them are having problems with the lights. That's the new research with city lights at night, because they travel at night to conserve energy.
Okay.
And the other big thing is data towers. And I was shocked by this because, this guy is such a milquetoast biologist from like some mainstream university. I think he went to, the Lahore Veterinary School. He went, like, a very, very typical guy. I doubt he has ideas about 4G or aliens or any of these conspiracy. He had the simple, like, sort of, he said the research papers show they're having problems with light at night, and they're having problems with data towers.
Okay.
I thought it was really weird, and I questioned him a bit further about it, but there was other stuff that we had to do in the park. But I found that really fascinating.
Right.
And did you remember when they put in the 4G towers, like birds just started dropping dead?
No, I don't remember
It
this.
happened in America or somewhere. Am I imagining?
Was it 5G or was it 4G?
5G maybe? Am I hallucinating this? I think birds started dropping dead at some place.
I don't know.
I have no idea. I can't back that up, but sure, maybe.
But in general, I think modern living has had like a lot of consequences for people.
You don't think it's bad that we're constantly seeing like dead babies or whatever on social media? And then
might.
porn, and then like someone doing a TikTok dance or whatever, and then a video essay about that one obscure thing, Mr. Pee Pee Poo Poo. Mr. Pee Pee Poo Poo, the YouTuber who went away, and then you switch to another thing, and then you switch to a comedy show, and then you switch to a film, and then that's 8 hours of your day gone. Because what I've heard about a lot of people complaining about is that my brain doesn't shut off when I sleep. Have you heard this?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Like, I've deleted Instagram and Twitter, by the way.
It is overstimulation because I remember when we were kids, there were times, when there was nothing to do. Like you would do nothing. That doesn't happen anymore.
I would kill someone to get that back.
It's funny, like the other day I saw like this old VHS tape. It was like
Like home family tapes.
It was like a family tape. It was one of our relatives had filmed one of their kids' birthdays. So like my family was also there, and they were showing us that old VHS tape. It was like the 90s. It must have been 95, 96. And people were just sitting there, and they were just sort of looking around. Nobody was like, nobody had a phone that they were looking at. And that almost seemed surreal, where I was like, oh yeah, people used to actually get bored and do nothing.
And look at each other's faces, and they would have to come up with games.
Or you would like sit down, and there would be times, like remember going to the bathroom without like a phone?
Yeah.
And you had to have like a shampoo bottle or something.
Yeah.
Or you would like think about stuff. You would talk to yourself, like you had these inner monologues.
I feel like every Unilever product, like I know the back of them. Like I know whatever chemicals they put in. Like, no, I know what you mean.
So that thing has died. The second thing I think that people just don't realize is the amount of processed, garbage that you're eating. I don't think food regulatory authorities have really done a good job
I
because
don't. Yeah, the food stuff and the water supply stuff. I didn't believe in the fluoride stuff before, but I do now. I'm actually right now looking for a toothpaste that is, like the desi manjan things. There's a alternative, like, cosmetics and medicine industry in the third world, like where they make organic with leaves and stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Like I've thrown out my toothbrush. I think like 3 or 4 days ago. I have just the miswak.
yeah, yeah.
So in Islamic culture, there is a thing called a twig toothbrush, and it's, I think the one I have is from it's either from, I think it's from neem. Neem is a bitter kind of plant, tree, twig. I don't know what neem is in English. Is it a kind of eucalyptus plant? I guess. I don't
Maybe,
know.
I don't know.
So I've been actually, I meant to ask one of my friends who does a lot of this, like, organic, whatever. That they make organic toothpaste, which is just like leaves and spices and stuff.
Okay. Isn't the miswak good enough without the
It's good
toothpaste?
enough, but I think that there is something that maybe our mouth's bacteria is used to of certain, like this. I think the we need certain like fragrance to, or just, like antibacterial sort of organic compounds like a lot of these plant leaves have. I think something or the other we might need in the mouth, because I don't know. I don't feel comfortable. It's just a modern, I guess, sensibility thing.
Right. It could be because of like the foods we're eating. And then
Yeah, 100%. Like tonsil stones people have. Have you seen those?
no.
So people, a lot of the gunk that they eat gets stuck in their tonsils, and they make little like sebaceous sort of stones, and
Oh,
and
okay.
they make them breath stink.
Really?
Yeah, and you can remove them medically if you want. It makes your breath stink. I think a lot of breath stink is just weird food.
That is horrifying.
Because I have a cat, and it eats purely, organically. It just eats meat and stuff. It doesn't. Its mouth never smells bad.
Right.
It just smells like, just spit smell, just whatever.
Right. We like put a lot of weird stuff into our bodies now. Like you pick up any commercially produced thing and it has like 15 ingredients listed on the bag. Even if it's like something like bread, it'll have
Just
like
generic bread. It just has bread.
it has like emulsifiers and calcium carbonate or like some kind of food coloring or whatever,
No, and the amount of sugar and everything.
and the amount of sugar.
I remember you told me when I went away for a holiday a couple of years ago, and I came back, you had lost an insane amount of weight.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you look like a whole other person. And when I asked you, and you said, "Oh, I did a carnivore thing for 2 weeks, 3 weeks,
For like a month.
a month," and then you had a piece of white bread,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
you thought it tasted like a cake.
It tastes like cake. Yeah,
That's
it literally tasted like cake.
Because for 1 month you ate salt and pepper and meat, not even pepper.
Yeah, no, salt, pepper, and meat, and I would have eggs in the morning.
Right. No
So,
dairy.
I would drink milk sometimes, yeah.
Sure.
But the idea was just to consume animal products,
So no fruit,
no vegetables,
no grain,
no grain,
and white bread tasted like cake to you.
just like cake. Yes,
Just untoasted, unbuttered, just white
it
bread.
was just white bread, and it tasted like cake. And
That's
I
nuts.
was so surprised when that happened. And another thing that happened was actually Asad, your brother, when he met me. I hadn't told him that I was doing any kind of diet or whatever, but he met me after a while and he said, "Bro, is there a reason that you're glowing today? Like your skin is glowing." And I was like, "Oh yeah, well, I'm on this diet." And a couple of things also happened. Like I used to have like this dandruff issue, which went away.
Yeah, I've heard that autoimmune type conditions go away, like skin conditions and scalp conditions go away if you just eat clean.
Yeah, so that was
And it might not
interesting.
necessarily just be the only meat diet. It's just it's an elimination diet which has eliminated all processed foods.
Yeah,
Definitely.
so I think what would be interesting is to go back and do that and then slowly start introducing fruits and vegetables. Yeah.
And then see where the capping point is.
Yeah.
I think with a lot of fruit and vegetable you wouldn't go wrong as long as you consume it like whole foods.
Right.
But I think where you'd start to go wrong is when any sort of grain enters the mix. But then again, a lot of pesticides on food. And I think some of the things you can't fight, like the pesticides on the vegetables and fruit and the antibiotics in the meat. You can't fight everything.
Yeah, like
Right?
what can you do apart from just, like moving to an island and
Or buying a farm and
yeah.
yeah.
So like I think on some
So
level,
so so the trust for I thought really fascinating tangent that you touched upon for a second, but then you dropped it was then why do people poo poo when you say, oh, I don't trust the COVID vaccine? How the hell do you trust the Food and Drug Administration for the past 60 years, 70
right,
years, 80 years, 100 even?
right,
When they've given you this food, they gave you
yeah,
cigarettes, for example.
right, which they initially said were perfectly fine for you
No,
and
in fact, they recommended it was good for
your
like
lungs.
lung health or whatever.
And again, like I think the issue is like these big commercial interests that come into play. Even with like the food thing, the reason that these big food authorities are not able to, clamp down effectively is because you have like, $1 million corporations that have to sell their, you know,
Do you think it's beyond just the profit motive? I think it's demonic at this point. Like they're purposefully
I think,
like, is
look,
there a big fluoride lobby that wants to put fluoride in the water? You know?
I don't know. I don't know. But what I will say is, look, like for example, recently there was this whole scandal with the Boeing thing, right?
Yeah,
Have you heard about that?
yeah.
So like two whistleblowers came forth. The FBI straight up just murked one of them.
You think it
Uh,
was the FBI?
it was the FBI. He was killed by FBI officials, and they say that
Or he resisted arrest or whatever?
yeah, that's what they say. The FBI didn't tell him that they were coming. It was like an unannounced
Announced.
raid,
Yeah.
and they just straight up shot him. So like the other guy is appearing in front of Senate. Now, what's interesting is that John Oliver did like this episode about a month ago before like the whistleblower came into Senate, and what he said or like what they were showing were like old interviews from like old Boeing employees who had been there for quite some time, and they said that there was like a marked shift that came into the company when it was merged with this American military corporation that basically designed jets and jet parts,
Okay.
right? And he said that the merger happened and then it became like this huge bloated sort of company. And he says, like,
Okay, so that jet company was a front for the government to do military corruption. And then they merged with Boeing, and then, heads started appearing in accounting that didn't make sense. And I get it.
yeah, but like what he said was that we started to notice that in board meetings, all of a sudden the sort of topic of discussion had shifted to stock prices. And they were trying to like encourage employees to invest in Boeing stocks and keep an eye on the Boeing stock and make sure that it sort of keeps improving. And then they split off the corporate branch from like the technical branch altogether. And he says that like the focus of all these meetings started becoming less about research and development and how we can, and more so the technical side of things, and it started becoming about the stock prices. Now what that resulted in seemingly is a lack of quality on the jets, where you have like literally mid-flight a door of a Boeing jet ripping off while there are passengers inside the
That's
jet,
nuts.
right? Then
And
you
the
have,
majority of airlines do use Boeing jets.
they do, yes. And the company, the airline that had like the door rip off said that after that happened, they checked all of the other Boeings and they found like some 60 something
Had a similar flaw.
screws loose, yeah, in various parts. So, clearly there was like a decline in quality. Now, you can tie this to the profit motive thing, right?
Tanking the stock.
Yeah, but like I think the deeper analysis is like you can tie it to the profit motive thing in that where profit incentive becomes so
Right.
much.
Where you start slacking on the job, and
You start to-
insurance will cover for the plane, and
Yeah, and
there's
like
ways around it. Okay.
now because it is more it's more beneficial to sort of manipulate that stock thing. So that's where like I think the deeper analysis comes into play, where you think about stuff like interest, gambling, these things being considered as moral sort of, moral decadence for the
Evil,
longest
no,
time,
evil always.
considered evil.
Decadence is like, I feel like evil is the more appropriate.
Sure, like you consider these as moral evils for the longest time. Like Christianity talks about not doing interest, staying away from gambling. Islam talks about it. And then you have like this entire economy that's sort of set
The
up
world economy, yeah.
on gambling, on interest. And then you see how these things seem to have like a corrupting influence.
On even private morality, on like individual morality.
Yeah, so like when you incentivize like a company that it can manipulate like these
Stock,
stock prices, and it can make a
rem-
whole ton of money
as
without
opposed to innovating or improving technological, yeah.
or focusing on the production, then you have like these sort of bad outcomes that come uh, that make them self-apparent. Similarly, I think even with like these food corporations and everything, the issue is that when you get into like this moral decadence, because I think this extreme love
Moral
of
decay.
moral decay, like this extreme love of wealth that you see, um, that's an evil thing. It's not a
Inherent.
good thing.
No, I also think that inherently wanting more money or just demanding wealth is an evil.
Yeah.
And this is not an anti-capitalistic thing. I get it. Free markets do make more sense than of all the economic systems that we have. In the way that capitalism is principally described, makes some sense. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it makes some sense compared to maybe a socialism or a Marxism. Um, but wealth seeking is not definitely not a moral virtue, and it cannot lead to a good society. Rent seeking, gambling on the stock market, or just interest based loans, borrowing at that scale. Like all these corporations get away with borrowing, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
All of them, they borrow public, and it's all public money.
Yes.
It's all public money. I mean, the state abusing public money is one thing, but like the fact that other private citizens get to abuse that because they run a Boeing or an Amazon or whatever.
Right.
Like all of these guys, like they pay like zero tax, and they're like always they're always exploiting public money.
Right.
They always have some way to get public debts, or some government contract which is completely financed by public money. There's always some loophole available for them to exploit. The criticism of capitalism might be appropriate, but like in of itself, inherently, the one. And if you, I read Adam Smith in my high school. I remember the Wealth of Nations. He didn't seem like somebody who was proponent of. He seemed like a very deep philosophical thinker. He wasn't a proponent of wealth hoarding or
Right.
money grubbing. It was more about the work ethic and humans' desire to be creative and ingenuity and that sort of thing.
Right.
But the money grubbing, I wonder where that comes from. The hand rubbing sort of money grubbing
Oh,
through
that's
through
easy.
through devious financial plans.
Gamers.
Gamers, I think it was the Brazilians mostly.
It's the gamers, man. They gotta have that new Fortnite skin that they can, sell off for like
No, yeah, just
$30.
upstairs before the recording, you were talking about this whole aspect of gambling that we completely ignore, which is the digital gambling, right?
Yeah, yeah. And like,
Like
the UK recently introduced some laws
for video game skins.
for video games, loot boxes, basically.
Yeah, skins or yeah.
Because they had to make sure that, because there was like a financial
So
aspect.
like gaming laws that would typically go for gambling, they have games
Yes.
commissions for casinos. They would apply the same because how do we know the algorithm is not rigged?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then to make people spend more money. Or I guarantee you, because I saw this really shitty documentary. It's a really bad documentary. But the one part I liked about it, it was something about Facebook. What was it called? It was really popular at one point.
The social
The social experiment was the social network. No,
social network.
that was the film.
That's a movie.
I think it was a documentary. It was really dumb. It was really behind the times, but it was for mouth breathers and sort of like maybe Facebook has been spying on me. It was well into the 2010s,
Okay.
maybe 16, 17. I don't know. And there was one interview in the start.
Look at my voice.
There was one interview in the start which I didn't because I skipped out of it. I couldn't watch the whole thing. It was too dumb. There was one guy who was an initial tech expert that they hired at Facebook, and he used to work for the gaming commissions in the casinos. And one of the mechanisms he was talking about was this, the scroll down delay
Right.
when the little buffering cursor comes up, that it's refreshing your page.
Yeah.
That thing, the delay between the actual delivery of the data and the wait time was created perfectly to create an anticipatory dopamine release, like with slot machines.
Okay.
Like when slot machines are, they could just display the winning numbers at the end, right? Without a second's delay.
But you have to have like the pageantry and like
The sort of the wait, the anticipation, and apparently the cursor thing on Facebook that makes you wait for like a split second is the anticipatory sort of dopamine release thing. Something new is gonna happen.
Right.
I don't know. The whole documentary was gay, and I clicked out of it. I couldn't watch
disown
it.
it.
I disowned it, but that part I found really fascinating. That we tend to forget the interdisciplinary sort of approach that these tech companies have. They're getting like psychological experts from gambling and sports, and I think the sort of ability to think in an abstract sort of way and connect these industries together is lacking on
It's hard to
a
do.
whole scale.
It's hard to do, man, because there's so much information going around. It's hard to pass through all of it, and again, it's even harder to do when you've got Skibbity Toilet right there on your phone. That stuff gets tough.
G-Man mods.
I think next week let's have like a more in-depth discussion on the sort of financial aspect that we covered today. I think we should.
Yeah, no, I mean, I mean, even the Bitcoin types are something that we should talk about at some point.
For sure.
It's a whole arc of financial gambling that completely we skipped
Yeah.
in our lives. It's weird, right?
Yeah.
There's almost a synchronicity where
We missed out on it.
I don't know, we missed out on it, but we like consciously removed ourselves from that whole NFT.
Yeah,
Crypto.
I guess we were suspicious about it. Again, for religious reasons more so.
Yeah.
But it was crazy how just like everybody and their mother was trading.
I've never not met anyone who didn't, try their hand at the gambling,
Yeah.
religious or otherwise, and it's nuts. You know that comedian Owen Benjamin?
Yeah.
Yeah, Owen Benjamin. Sometimes when I had Twitter, I used to look at him on Twitter and see some of his rants. He's a funny guy. He's a bit out there, but funny guy. And he said that a lot of Muslims try to debate me about whether or not cryptocurrencies are halal, that they're permissible.
Yeah.
And he says that, and he would obviously, in his comedian sort of dismissive way, said they're not real Muslims. He was very clear in his principal stance that this is the same kind of gambling.
Owen Benjamin.
Yeah, and I was surprised that a lot of sort of religious types would tend to disagree. Would be like, no, if you look at the law this way, I just think there was a lot of talking.
Dude, it's the allure of just easy money.
It's universal now, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think it was historically universal, easy money. I think it was always like the idea of the delayed reward and good things come to those who wait, kind of,
No, for sure.
hard work, early bird gets the worm kind of
You
sentiments.
couldn't game the system like this, right? Before,
No.
because like money has.
You'd be one in a few thousand as an outlaw if you wanted to get quick money and quick rewards, and you would be like a kind of a thief or something. And even that required some sort of physical work ethic.
You couldn't like conjure money from like just nothingness.
Nothingness, no. I don't trust e-money. I don't trust it. I had my problems with fiat currencies. I get it. I get the desire.
Yeah.
I get the principal idea that drives e-money, but I don't trust it. If it's a get-rich-quick scheme, sure, but be honest about it. I think the more grandiose sort of ideas that people present about it, that puts me off. It sounds like a cult. It sounds like a pyramid, like a business. You remember pyramid scheme guys when we were a teenager, 20-something?
Right.
in your family, some uncle, some idiot buys into some pharmaceutical pyramid scheme or cosmetics or whatever.
Yeah.
It's the crypto guys now.
Look, my thing is, fine, you can have your technological innovation and grand ideas and everything, but show me that side of crypto, because as far as I can see right now,
It's all sales guys.
It's just gambling.
It's
dude.
all pyramid scheme, gambling, sales guys.
It's just gambling. It's just trading. That's all it is.
Do you see remember the BitConnect wala meme?
No,
Bitcoin. You remember?
no.
Okay, so BitConnect.
Oh, I remember.
The bald guy.
I remember. Yeah, yeah. Like
What's up, LA?
The Mexican.
The
Yeah.
Mexican guy. BitConnect that was the whole energy. Every single time. I think it was reality mimicking art.
Look, BitConnect and that stuff was. I think it was. There were two aspects.
More of an overt Ponzi scheme. I get it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm saying, you know how like life imitates art, good art sometimes?
Yeah.
That was the perfect encapsulation of the energy of a Bitcoin, of any crypto sort of, marketer, sales guy.
Yeah, true.
Like I saw this comedian, Tim Dillon, is a really funny guy, really a funny American comedian. They paid him to host a Bitcoin conference, and the twins, the Facebook twins, those guys were big Bitcoin guys, right?
Yeah.
They were there, and it was a panel, and they were supposed to host it. And obviously, he's doing his bits. He's a comedian.
They made a lot of money off of crypto also.
Those brothers did. They did. Those people seemed insane because he was sort of making fun of them.
Yeah.
Because he was more from a conventional financial world. Obviously, Tim Dillon in the background for the comedian is that he sold mortgages, subprime mortgages, at the end of the at the end of the golden period and at the start of the 2008 financial crisis, and then post it for a little while. So he understood like a conventional Ponzi scheme or a conventional get rich quick sort of financial scam.
Yeah.
And he was reflecting that energy on them, and they hated him. They wanted to kill him. Like the energy they were giving him, the audience, they wanted to kill him. And I think some of the jokes went over their heads because they didn't get the bit that he was doing.
Right.
And I think if somebody cynically did Bitcoin or cryptocurrency just because they could make a buck and they could exploit people, sure, if that's your disposition, I'm not gonna debate you on it or whatever, because I've done skeevy sales guy stuff as well. Because we're both in
Property.
in real estate sort of sales back in the day, especially. But overall, I would say as a moral sort of standard for society, I don't think so. I don't think it's gonna work. It's gonna be worse than subprime mortgage. It was worse. I mean, every month it loses 40 billion, $50 billion in value, something ridiculous, right?
Right.
Ups and downs.
It's like you said, I think there were two aspects to it. There was the weird Ponzi scheme aspect to it, because it sort of existed in a way where it was very easy to.
There was a vacuum and fraudsters created in.
But then secondly, also just it's straight up gambling also.
Look at how all the celebrities got away with NFT fraud.
Because I think a lot of Westerners,
Sorry, you complete your point. Yeah.
a lot of Westerners, for example, would say that it's not different from stocks.
That would be see, that's a really fascinating thing. The immediate knee-jerk reaction is it's like stocks, and so is ours. But ours is, just like stocks, it's haram. It's forbidden. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
But their knee-jerk reaction is, just like stocks, it's great.
Yeah.
It's the sort of the precursor moral socialization or training that immediately any sensible Muslim guy would be like, just like stocks, it's gambling.
Yeah, because I read something very funny. There was this big time a stock trader. It might actually
Warren Buffett.
No, it might have been Warren Buffett, but I forget the name. It was one of his associates or whatever. And he famously said about, people who do cryptocurrency, like the crypto bros. He said that, I would never let my daughter marry one of those guys. I don't know if you would. And I thought that was very funny, because I was like,
He let her date Jeffrey Epstein though, some weird freak stock.
Yeah,
freak.
I was like, how is this any different than what you're doing? Do you have some kind of blinders on?
No,
this is the same thing.
No, just because the pores are. The only difference I think with cryptocurrency was it empowered regular people for a hot minute before it didn't, before Elon Musk and the bigwigs came in And that sort of democratic element to it
Yeah, I think
was attractive initially.
with stocks,
Maybe that was the case initially with stocks as well.
what you can perhaps make the argument that there's an actual company that you are investing in
Whose debt you're buying?
whose debt you. Well, yeah, but like that's not the idea, right? The idea is that company.
So you're
is,
financing their operations.
yeah, exactly.
This bullshit, man. You're buying their debt, and they get to inflate their value, and then they get to grow as companies.
Yeah, so that's like ultimately.
I'm
that's
just
the
saying the
consequence.
instinctual sort of savagery, wild man nature of Muslims. It's a good thing. If they don't have honestly, like, if you can't understand the technology intuitively, it shouldn't be something that you have to trust. This idea of just we trust people every day for things. Like, look at the fact and how just because they've become a society which brushes these financial misgivings under the rug.
Yeah.
Look at how many celebrities got away with it. Mainstream Hollywood, social media, like
Yeah.
Logan Paul and his, what is his brother called?
Jake Paul.
Jake Paul and KSI. Everyone made NFTs and Bitcoins.
All of them
or
did
whatever.
like scams. Yeah.
It was straight up scams, and
All of them got away with it.
all of them got away with it, and all of them are richer for it.
I think Logan Paul was involved in at least 2 NFT scams, which he was called out for, and then
Coffeezilla got him, yeah, but nothing. That's the thing. I genuinely think they've built a society where these are the youngest active financial members of the 20, 30 somethings, right?
yeah,
They've trained their young people into the quick rich, get rich quick scheme, get rich or die trying, whatever. I'm telling you, it's beyond repair now. You can't wake up one day and have a society that says interest is a problem, gambling is a problem, unless the Christian ethic just sweeps them.
right.
You know what I mean? Hopefully for them, good for them. I'm saying, because I don't know if they're gonna make sense of Islam anytime soon. Europe has a good, the Americans, I don't know with Islam, but I hope so. But like, I don't think unless there's a big moral awakening, I'm afraid for our societies because we're with that technology lag. We're like, and people here are trying to we have to catch up to them. We need complex financial systems too.
Yeah,
No, we don't. We need to simplify financial transactions and simplify financial systems. We need to create disposable capital that people can use, and that's about it. That's the only problem we have to solve. We don't have to solve the gambling problem, or we just need capital disposable so people can use them for small business. That's it,
yeah,
and production, even large scale production. That's it.
true enough. I think let's call it quits for today,
Yeah, I mean I'm getting feverish already.
and let's pick it up next week. Bye bye.